What the hell?
Dean, I can't help myself. I have to ask a Marcel question.
Yeah, hit me.
Have you ever, just for fun, imagined how a scene between Stitch and Marcel might play out?
We have. I think it would be short.
That's fair enough.
Depending on how hungry Stitch was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would very much believe that. In all seriousness now, you are behind 2 movies where different styles of animation are brought into the live action world. So I am curious, of the 2, which did you find more challenging to pull off?
Ooh, interesting. Honestly, this sounds crazy probably because it's such a difference in scale, but I think Marcel was, because it was a very small team making a film independently for, real shoestring budget. But also just the exploration of it, like figuring out how to do that for the first time is always harder than once you've done it once successfully and you have learned from all those lessons.
Makes all the sense in the world. I was wondering if just like the minutia of stop motion would also make that a little more difficult than having the tools available with this kind of effects work.
Yeah, I think it that part of the process, I guess, was so similar, but also so different. Obviously, stop motion is a physical process for the animation, and 3D animation is not. But I think you in essence are basically doing the same job, where you're trying to create a real reality in front of the camera, so that the human actors and everyone, cast and crew, can react to something in front of to inform their performance. And then afterwards it comes out the whole thing of kind of trying to integrate it, make it look integrated, and then doing that while also maintaining all the charm and expressiveness is, they're similar creative tasks.
You make it sound so easy.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Here's a really big question for both of you, because whenever we see these iconic animated movies adapted into a live action film, like sky high pressure, and there are so many people out there that want this movie to exactly be what the original was, but that is not possible when you're showing it in a different format. So can you maybe give me an example of both? Something from the original that you knew was important to honor and hold tight to, but also something that had to change to suit the live action format.
I mean, there's 1,000 of those examples, and anytime you're doing an adaptation of something you love, there's going to be heartbreaks, things that you really wanted to get in there that just didn't work for one reason or another. But I think that we were trying to be thoughtful the whole time. I mean, that's that sort of question, gut checky process started on day one and then really only finished up 2 weeks ago. But basically saying to ourselves, we love this movie. Animation's a very different medium, like you say, from live action. They're good at different things. And so we really, it was a process of taking every piece of that and asking ourselves, why does this work in animation? Could it work in live action? And if not, how do we find something that basically rhymes with or kind of embodies the essence of what that older element did, but is more achievable or will just play better in live action? And I think mostly what was guiding us was that the opportunity of live action is that you can dig deeper, I think, into the emotional realities, into the emotional arcs, story arcs, and especially the human characters. And so I think it was also a process of figuring out, well, how do we do that, ground everything so that we can do that, but also not lose all of the fun, whimsy, expressiveness of Stitch and the other animated elements. In terms of examples, I would say one that we kind of struggled with, but is ultimately in the film, is Stitch's capacity for destruction. We found out pretty early on that things like destruction and violence, those things can be very funny in animation. When you depict them in live action, sometimes they can feel mean, sometimes it can feel scary. I always use the example of you can imagine there being a really dopey, funny car crash on a highway in animation. That could be a funny gag in animation. I would challenge any live action director to show me a funny 10-car pileup on a highway.
Someone's got Final Destination on the brain. I always do.
So we had to figure out, how to really motivate Stitch's destructive streak in a way that made it always about curiosity or reacting to, a stimulus and not kind of just being a jerk.
Makes all the sense in the world. I'm wondering if your experience producing Aladdin came in handy here. Was there any particular lesson you learned adapting that movie that you found influencing your approach to doing it here with this one?
Yeah, one was don't mess it up. So that was a piece of advice you got from a lot of people. So sort of waded into that territory again, which is always terrifying. But no, I think it's wanting to honor the thing you love. And in both cases, these were, classic animated movies and seminal movies of my life, and wanting to make sure that we did get it right. So I think we talked a lot about being fans, like every choice you make has to be from a place of a fan. And what would you be mad about if it wasn't in the movie? And so there are things like Hawaiian roller coaster. I don't think there was ever a time we talked about that sequence not being in the movie. And then it's a little bit like, but how do you shoot it? And how is Dean going to tackle this? And what's going to be different about it? So there are those things. And then themes, I think the theme of Ohana, little and broken, but still good. I think those things, like you knew those were going to be in this movie because it meant so much to you. But is there a way to nuance it or change it a little bit? And there's the moment where Nani says to Lilo, but we were left behind, and it is a slightly different take on Ohana. And it wasn't just all rose-colored glasses. It's sort of what was happening to this family and how does she learn that, yes, that happened, but there is actually sort of room for a broader Ohana and I can let other people into my life. So I think it's just making all those decisions throughout as a fan and as someone who loves the material. And then hopefully the audience will feel that love in it and they'll understand sort of where all these decisions came from.
The two of them are so good together. Semi-unrelated follow-up that popped to my mind because of how I connected Aladdin to this. I want to do the same thing with Haunted Mansion. Is there anything you learned making Haunted Mansion that you think might influence your Space Mountain movie?
Well, it's interesting. In both cases, with Aladdin and Lilo and Stitch, you sort of had these stories that you knew worked in animation. So it was trying to figure out, like, well, what works in live action and then what needs to change. With Haunted Mansion and with Space Mountain, if we do end up making that movie, they're both, there is no narrative to sort of follow. So you are tasked with the challenge of, like, how do you embody the spirit of a ride and the thing that you love, but it's a very short experience, and how do you turn that into an original narrative? So they're two very different things to tackle. And each come with different expectations, too.
They all come with so much pressure. I'm about to tell you, it's my favorite ride. Pressure's on making a movie. I'm going to say thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Huge congrats on the movie.